The morning sun cast long shadows across the military compound as Maria Gonzalez adjusted her rearview mirror for the third time. Her hands, steady despite the nervous energy coursing through her veins, gripped the steering wheel of the armored vehicle. Today marked her first assignment as a driver for high-ranking military officials, and the weight of responsibility felt heavier than the bulletproof vest she wore beneath her uniform. "Just another driver," she had overheard Colonel Peterson muttering to his aide the previous evening. The words stung, but Maria had grown accustomed to such dismissive comments throughout her military career. At 28, she had already spent 6 years proving herself in various roles, from communications specialist to logistics coordinator. Each position had been hard-earned, each promotion fought for against the skeptical glances of her male colleagues. The compound buzzed with activity as soldiers prepared for what intelligence reports suggested would be a routine inspection tour of forward operating bases along the border. General William Harrison, a decorated veteran of 3 combat deployments, was scheduled to visit 4 remote outposts to assess their readiness and morale. The tour was considered low risk, a fact that explained why Maria had been assigned as his driver instead of one of the more experienced male personnel. Maria checked her watch, 6:30 hours. The general would emerge from the briefing room in 30 minutes, expecting his transportation to be ready for immediate departure. She had arrived 2 hours early, conducting a thorough inspection of the vehicle, checking tire pressure, fluid levels, and testing all communication equipment. Every detail mattered, especially when others were looking for reasons to question her competence. The armored Humvee gleamed in the morning light, its reinforced panels and bulletproof windows reflecting Maria's determined expression. She had requested this specific vehicle after studying the route and identifying potential vulnerabilities. While others saw it as excessive preparation for a routine mission, Maria understood that thorough planning often meant the difference between success and failure. Her background had taught her to be meticulous. Growing up as the daughter of a mechanic in a small Texas town, Maria had learned about engines and vehicles before she could properly ride a bicycle. Her father, Roberto, had owned a small repair shop where Maria spent countless hours after school, watching him diagnose problems and fix complicated mechanical issues. Those early lessons in patience, attention to detail, and problem-solving would prove invaluable in her military career. The decision to join the army had surprised many in her hometown. Maria could have easily taken over her father's business or pursued a college degree in automotive engineering. Instead, she felt called to serve her country, drawn by the challenge and the opportunity to prove that determination and skill mattered more than gender or background assumptions. Basic training had been brutal. The physical demands were manageable for someone who had grown up working with her hands, but the psychological pressure of constantly proving herself worthy of respect took its toll. Drill sergeants who seemed determined to break her spirit, fellow recruits who questioned her presence, and a system that often felt designed to exclude rather than include women in meaningful roles. Despite these challenges, Maria had graduated near the top of her class, earning recognition for her mechanical aptitude and leadership potential. Her subsequent assignments had been a mixed bag of opportunities and obstacles. Some commanding officers recognized her abilities and gave her challenging roles. Others seemed content to assign her to administrative duties that kept her safely in the background. The assignment as General Harrison's driver represented a significant opportunity. While many viewed it as simply transportation duty, Maria understood the access and visibility it provided. Successful completion of this mission could open doors to more specialized training and advanced positions within military intelligence or special operations. As she waited in the vehicle, Maria reviewed the route one final time. The journey would take them through increasingly remote terrain, starting with well-maintained highways before transitioning to secondary roads and finally rough tracks leading to the forward operating bases. Each location presented unique challenges. Mountain passes where ambushes could be easily staged, river crossings where mechanical failures could strand them, and communication dead zones where calling for backup would be impossible. Intelligence briefings had indicated minimal threat levels, but Maria's instincts told her to remain vigilant. Her experience in previous deployments had taught her that complacency was often more dangerous than any external threat. The most dangerous missions were frequently those that appeared routine on paper, but concealed unexpected complications. At 700 hours exactly, General Harrison emerged from the command building, flanked by 2 aides and a communications specialist. Maria stepped out of the vehicle and snapped to attention, offering a crisp salute that the general returned with practiced efficiency. He was younger than she had expected, perhaps 45, with graying temples and sharp eyes that seemed to take in every detail of his surroundings. "Sergeant Gonzalez," he acknowledged, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "I trust you're familiar with today's itinerary." "Yes, sir. 4 forward operating bases with estimated travel time of 6 hours total, sir." Maria's response was precise and confident, betraying none of the nervousness she felt. The general nodded approvingly before climbing into the passenger seat. His aides and the communications specialist settled into the rear compartment, immediately beginning discussions about logistics and timing. Maria took her position behind the wheel, adjusting mirrors and checking instruments one final time before starting the engine. As they departed the main compound, Maria maintained the professional demeanor expected of a military driver while remaining acutely aware of her surroundings. The general seemed content to review briefing documents during the initial portion of the journey, occasionally asking questions of his staff about troop morale, equipment status, and intelligence assessments. The first destination, Forward Operating Base Alpha, was located 45 minutes northeast of the main compound. The route followed a well-maintained highway through rolling hills before branching onto a secondary road that wound through increasingly dense forest. Maria drove with practiced smoothness, maintaining appropriate speed while constantly scanning for potential hazards or unusual activity. 20 minutes into the journey, as they approached a series of sharp curves through a wooded valley, Maria noticed something that made her instincts flare with warning. A civilian truck was parked alongside the road ahead, its driver appearing to work on the engine while 2 passengers stood nearby. The scene looked innocent enough, but something about their positioning and body language struck her as wrong. The truck was positioned at an optimal location for an ambush, just beyond a blind curve where an approaching vehicle would have minimal time to react. The men standing beside it kept glancing toward the road rather than focusing on the apparent mechanical problem. Most concerning was the fact that one of them appeared to be speaking into a radio or cell phone while maintaining surveillance of the approaching military vehicle. Maria's mind raced through possibilities and responses. This could be a legitimate breakdown requiring assistance, or it could represent a serious threat to the general's safety. Her training emphasized the importance of maintaining situational awareness while avoiding paranoia that could compromise the mission. However, her instincts were screaming that something was wrong with this picture. "Sir," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the adrenaline beginning to course through her system, "I'm observing a potential situation ahead that may require evasive action." General Harrison looked up from his documents, following her gaze toward the disabled truck. His combat experience immediately recognized the same warning signs that had alerted Maria. "What do you recommend, Sergeant?" The question surprised her. Most officers would have simply issued orders or taken control of the situation themselves. The fact that the general was asking for her assessment showed a level of respect for her judgment that few had demonstrated during her career. "Alternative route through the mountain pass adds 30 minutes, but avoids this potential choke point, sir. Or we could request aerial reconnaissance to confirm the nature of this situation before proceeding." Before the general could respond, one of the men beside the truck raised what appeared to be a rifle, confirming Maria's worst fears. The setup was indeed an ambush, and they had driven directly into it with only seconds to react. "Contact rear," Maria shouted, simultaneously yanking the steering wheel hard left and flooring the accelerator. The armored Humvee responded with surprising agility, tires squealing as it veered off the paved road and into the adjacent forest. Behind them, the sound of gunfire erupted as the ambushers opened fire on their rapidly retreating vehicle. The general and his staff were thrown against their restraints as Maria maneuvered the heavy vehicle between trees and over rough terrain that was never intended for automotive traffic. Branches scraped against the armored sides and bulletproof windows as she pushed deeper into the forest, putting distance between them and their attackers while seeking cover from the incoming fire. "Communications, get us back up immediately," General Harrison barked to his specialist, who was already working to establish contact with the main compound. The radio crackled with static and interference as they moved further from the road and into the heavily forested terrain. Maria's hands flew over the controls, engaging four-wheel drive and adjusting suspension settings to handle the increasingly challenging terrain. Her father's lessons about vehicle dynamics and her military training in tactical driving merged into instinctive responses that kept them moving despite obstacles that would have stopped most drivers. A fallen tree blocked their path ahead, too large to drive over and too long to navigate around quickly. Maria spotted a narrow creek bed running parallel to their direction of travel and made a split-second decision to follow it, using the natural depression as cover while maintaining their escape route. The vehicle lurched and bounced as it dropped into the stream bed, but the armor held and the engine continued to run smoothly. "Outstanding driving, Sergeant," the general said, his voice calm despite the chaos surrounding them. "Where did you learn to handle a vehicle like this?" "My father owned a repair shop, sir. Spent a lot of time driving through rough country to retrieve broken-down equipment." Maria's response was brief, her attention focused on navigating the challenging terrain while monitoring their surroundings for additional threats. The sound of pursuit engines could be heard behind them, growing closer as their attackers organized to follow. Maria realized that simply running would not be sufficient. They needed a strategic advantage to escape or neutralize the threat. Her mind raced through the topographic details she had memorized during mission preparation, searching for terrain features that could provide tactical advantage. 2 miles ahead, the creek bed intersected with a series of rocky outcroppings that formed natural defensive positions. If they could reach that location, they could establish a defensible perimeter while waiting for backup to arrive. However, the route required navigating increasingly treacherous terrain that would test both her driving skills and the vehicle's capabilities. "Sir, I can get us to a defensible position, but it's going to be a rough ride," she warned, already adjusting their course toward the rocky area she had identified. The general studied the surrounding terrain and nodded his approval. "Do whatever you need to do, Sergeant. We trust your judgment." Those words carried more weight than he probably realized. Throughout her career, Maria had been given orders, assignments, and responsibilities, but rarely had anyone simply expressed trust in her judgment. The confidence was both empowering and sobering, as she understood that the lives of everyone in the vehicle now depended on her decisions and abilities. Behind them, the pursuit vehicles were gaining ground, their drivers apparently willing to risk damage in order to maintain contact with their target. Radio chatter indicated that multiple groups were involved in the ambush, with some moving to cut off escape routes while others maintained direct pursuit. This was clearly a well-planned operation targeting the general specifically. As they approached the rocky outcroppings Maria had identified, she began to formulate a plan that went beyond simple escape. The terrain offered opportunities for tactical maneuvering that could turn their disadvantage into an advantage, but it would require precise timing and considerable risk. Looking at the determined faces of her passengers, she realized they were prepared to trust her with their lives in ways that few people ever had. The armored Humvee climbed steadily through the rocky terrain as Maria pushed the vehicle's capabilities to their limits. Each boulder and crevice required split-second decisions about speed, angle, and momentum. Behind them, the sound of pursuit engines grew fainter as their attackers struggled with the increasingly difficult terrain in their lighter, less capable vehicles. Maria's mind worked frantically to process the tactical situation while maintaining control of their escape. The rocky outcroppings she had targeted were still half a mile ahead, but the route required navigating a series of switchbacks that would expose them to potential sniper fire from elevated positions. She needed to find an alternative approach that would provide better cover while still reaching their defensive objective. "Sergeant, what's your assessment of our pursuers' capabilities?" General Harrison asked, his military mind clearly working through the same tactical considerations that occupied Maria's thoughts. 3 vehicles, sir. 2 appear to be modified pickup trucks with mounted weapons. 1 is a civilian van that's probably carrying additional personnel. They're having trouble with the terrain, but they know this area better than we do." Maria's analysis was based on quick glimpses in her mirrors combined with the sounds of engines struggling behind them. The communications specialist had finally established contact with the main compound, but the news was not encouraging. "Sir, base reports that our nearest backup is 45 minutes away. They're scrambling helicopter support, but weather conditions are limiting visibility for air operations." 45 minutes was far too long to maintain their current situation. The attackers would either find a way to reach their position or bring in additional forces to surround them. Maria realized that waiting for rescue was not a viable option. They needed to take control of the situation themselves. A memory from her childhood suddenly surfaced as she studied the terrain ahead. Her father had often told stories about his younger days working as a guide for hunting parties in similar rocky country. One tale involved using the terrain's natural acoustics to create confusion among a pack of wolves that had been threatening their camp. The principle might apply to their current situation. "Sir, I have an idea, but it's going to require everyone to trust my judgment completely," Maria said, her voice carrying new confidence as the plan formed in her mind. General Harrison turned to study her profile as she navigated around a large boulder. Something in her tone suggested that she was no longer thinking like a driver trying to escape, but like a tactician developing a strategy to win. "Explain your thinking, Sergeant." "These rock formations create natural acoustic channels. If I position our vehicle correctly, we can use engine noise and radio transmissions to make them think we're in a different location. Meanwhile, we can actually establish position with tactical advantage." Maria's plan was risky, but it offered their best chance of survival until backup arrived. The general considered this for several moments, while Maria continued driving toward the rocky area. Her proposal required a level of tactical creativity that impressed him, especially coming from someone who had been dismissed as just a driver by other members of his staff. "What do you need from us to make this work?" he asked. Maria felt a surge of confidence at his willingness to follow her lead. "I need the communications specialist to prepare for synchronized radio transmissions on specific timing. Your aides need to be ready for immediate deployment to defensive positions when we reach the target area. And sir, I need you to trust that I can position this vehicle exactly where we need it to be." The next 10 minutes tested everyone's nerves as Maria executed her plan with precision that surprised even herself. She maneuvered the armored vehicle through seemingly impossible gaps between rocks, using the terrain to mask their movement while creating the acoustic deception she had described. The sound of their engine echoed off stone walls in ways that would confuse anyone trying to track their exact location. As they approached the defensive position she had identified, Maria could hear their pursuers spreading out, apparently trying to surround what they thought was their quarry's location. The deception was working, but the advantage would only last until the attackers realized their mistake. "Now, sir," Maria said quietly as she brought the vehicle to a stop in a position that provided both cover and clear fields of fire. "Everyone needs to move to defensive positions immediately." The general and his staff exited the vehicle with military efficiency, each man taking position among the rocks according to their training and experience. Maria remained with the vehicle, both to maintain their mobility option and to operate its mounted communication equipment. From her position, she had a clear view of the surrounding terrain and could coordinate their defense. The first attacker appeared on a ridge approximately 200 meters to their east, clearly confused by the acoustic misdirection, but still searching for targets. Maria spoke quietly into her radio headset, directing the general's attention to the threat while maintaining their concealment. "Contact east, single shooter, elevation advantage but exposed position," she whispered. General Harrison's response demonstrated why he had achieved his rank through combat experience rather than political connections. His shot was precise and immediate, eliminating the threat before the attacker could identify their actual position or communicate with his companions. However, the gunfire revealed their general location to the remaining attackers, who began moving to establish better positions for assault. Maria realized that their static defense would soon become untenable as the enemy coordinated their attack. They needed to maintain the initiative through movement and aggression rather than simply waiting to be overwhelmed. "Sir, recommend we take the fight to them while they're still disorganized," Maria suggested over the radio. "I can provide mobile support while your team advances on their positions." The proposal was audacious coming from a sergeant addressing a general, but the tactical situation demanded creative leadership rather than rigid adherence to hierarchy. General Harrison recognized that Maria's intimate knowledge of the terrain and vehicle capabilities made her the logical person to coordinate their counterattack. "Approved. What do you need us to do?" Maria's plan unfolded with mathematical precision. While the general and his team provided covering fire from their rocky positions, She maneuvered the armored vehicle to flanking positions that forced the attackers to divide their attention and firepower. The vehicle's armor absorbed incoming rounds, while its elevated position allowed her to spot enemy movements and direct fire accordingly. The communications specialist had established contact with the approaching backup forces, providing them with precise coordinates and tactical situation updates. Helicopter support was still grounded by weather, but ground units were making better time than originally estimated and would arrive within 20 minutes. 20 minutes that felt like hours as the battle continued among the rocky terrain. Maria found herself transitioning seamlessly between driver, spotter, and tactical coordinator as the situation demanded. Her childhood experience with mechanical systems combined with her military training to create capabilities that none of her superiors had recognized or utilized. During a brief lull in the fighting, General Harrison's voice crackled over the radio with a tone of genuine respect that Maria had rarely heard directed toward her. "Sergeant, where did you learn tactical maneuvering like this?" "Video games, sir," she replied without hesitation, her answer drawing surprised laughter from the other team members despite their dangerous situation. "Spent a lot of time playing tactical simulations and studying military history. Never thought it would be applicable to real situations." The honesty of her response seemed to surprise the general, but it also helped him understand how she had developed such sophisticated tactical thinking despite her relatively junior rank. Intelligence and curiosity, combined with practical experience and natural aptitude, had created someone whose capabilities far exceeded what her official position suggested. As the final attackers were neutralized or driven off, the sound of approaching military vehicles could be heard in the distance. Backup had arrived, but the immediate threat had been eliminated through teamwork and tactical creativity that none of the participants would ever forget. Maria brought the armored vehicle back to the central defensive position as the general and his team emerged from their rocky positions. Everyone was uninjured, and their mission could continue once the area was secured and investigated. However, something fundamental had changed in how they viewed each other and their respective capabilities. "Outstanding work, everyone," General Harrison announced as he approached Maria's position. "Sergeant Gonzalez, your tactical thinking and vehicle handling were exceptional. I want a full after-action report, and I'm recommending you for specialized training opportunities that match your demonstrated abilities." The recognition was gratifying, but Maria realized that the most important thing she had gained was confidence in her own judgment and abilities. For the first time in her military career, she had been in a situation where her ideas were heard, implemented, and successful. The experience would change how she approached every future challenge. As the backup forces secured the area and began investigating the ambush site, Maria conducted a thorough inspection of their vehicle. Despite the rough terrain and incoming fire, all systems were functioning normally. Her preparation and maintenance had prevented mechanical failures that could have been catastrophic in their situation. The communications specialist approached her as she completed her inspection, carrying a tablet with preliminary intelligence reports about their attackers. "Sergeant, looks like this was a targeted operation specifically aimed at the general. Someone had detailed intelligence about his travel plans and route." The implications were sobering. This had not been a random attack or opportunistic ambush, but a carefully planned operation by people with access to classified military information. The fact that Maria's defensive driving and tactical thinking had disrupted their plan probably saved everyone's lives, but it also meant that similar threats might exist throughout the remainder of their mission. "We need to assume that all aspects of our planned itinerary are compromised," Maria said thoughtfully. "Alternative routes and modified timing will be essential for completing the inspection tour safely." General Harrison overheard her assessment and nodded approvingly. "Agreed. Sergeant, I want you to develop alternative plans for reaching each of our remaining destinations. Your judgment has proven sound, and your knowledge of terrain and vehicle capabilities makes you the logical person to plan our revised approach." The assignment represented a significant expansion of Maria's responsibilities, but also an acknowledgement of her demonstrated competence in areas that went far beyond simply driving a vehicle from one location to another. She was being asked to function as a tactical planner and security coordinator, roles typically reserved for much higher-ranking personnel. As the convoy prepared to continue their mission with enhanced security measures, Maria reflected on how dramatically her situation had changed in just a few hours. This morning, she had been just a driver, assigned to provide transportation for important people. Now she was a trusted member of the team whose judgment and expertise were actively sought by a general officer. The transformation had not occurred through political maneuvering or social networking, but through demonstrated competence under extreme pressure. When the situation had demanded tactical thinking, precise vehicle handling, and creative problem-solving, she had delivered all three at levels that impressed experienced combat veterans. However, Maria understood that maintaining her newfound credibility would require continuing to perform at the same high level throughout the remainder of their mission. The remaining inspection stops would present new challenges and potential threats that would test her abilities in different ways. Success would depend on maintaining vigilance while avoiding the overconfidence that could lead to dangerous mistakes. The convoy reorganized with additional security vehicles and modified personnel assignments based on the morning's attack. Maria found herself at the center of tactical planning discussions as senior officers recognized that her local terrain knowledge and defensive driving skills were critical assets for completing the mission safely. The second forward operating base was located in mountain terrain that offered numerous opportunities for ambush, making route selection and timing crucial factors. Sergeant Gonzalez, what's your assessment of the primary route to FOB Bravo? Colonel Peterson asked, his earlier dismissive attitude replaced by genuine respect for her tactical judgment. The map spread across the hood of their vehicle showed three possible approaches, each with distinct advantages and vulnerabilities. Maria studied the topographic details while considering factors that went beyond simple distance and travel time. Her analysis incorporated defensive positions, communication coverage, weather patterns, and potential escape routes in ways that impressed the experienced officers surrounding her. Sir, the primary route follows the valley floor, which provides good road conditions but creates multiple choke points where we'd be vulnerable to attack from elevated positions. She traced alternative paths with her finger while explaining her reasoning. The Mountain Ridge route adds 90 minutes but offers better visibility and fewer ambush opportunities. The middle route through the forest provides concealment but limits our mobility if we encounter problems. General Harrison listened carefully to her analysis while comparing it to intelligence assessments from his staff. Maria's evaluation aligned with professional threat analyses while adding practical considerations that could only come from someone with extensive experience handling vehicles in challenging terrain. "Which route do you recommend?" he asked, genuinely interested in her tactical judgment. "Ridge route, sir. The time penalty is acceptable considering the reduced risk, and the high elevation will improve our communication capabilities with both base stations and air support." Maria's confidence in her assessment was evident, but she remained appropriately deferential to the decision-making authority of her superiors. The convoy departed 30 minutes later using Maria's recommended route, with additional security measures that included aerial reconnaissance and communication protocols designed to provide early warning of potential threats. The mountain road proved challenging for the heavily armored vehicles, but Maria's preparation and skill kept their progress steady despite steep grades and sharp curves. During the ascent, radio chatter indicated that investigators at the ambush site had discovered evidence suggesting a much larger operation than initially suspected. The attackers had sophisticated equipment and detailed intelligence about military operations, implying coordination with insider sources or foreign intelligence services. This information elevated the threat level for the remainder of their mission while validating Maria's cautious approach to route planning. Base reports that analysis of captured equipment suggests professional military training among our attackers, the communications specialist announced. They're treating this as a potential national security issue rather than simple criminal activity. The implications were sobering for everyone in the vehicle. They were no longer dealing with opportunistic criminals or local insurgents, but with organized opposition that posed threats to operational security across multiple levels. General Harrison's inspection tour had apparently been targeted by people with resources and capabilities that extended far beyond what anyone had anticipated. "Sergeant, this information validates your tactical approach to route selection," the general observed. Professional military opponents would have planned for multiple contingencies, making predictable routes extremely dangerous. Maria acknowledged his assessment while maintaining focus on the challenging driving conditions. The mountain road required constant attention to vehicle dynamics, tire traction, and engine performance at high altitude. Her mechanical knowledge proved essential as she adjusted driving techniques to compensate for reduced air density and modified suspension settings to handle the uneven road surface. An hour into the mountain ascent, they encountered their first major obstacle. A rockslide had partially blocked the road, leaving barely enough clearance for their armored vehicles to pass. The obstruction could have been natural or deliberately created, making it a potential ambush site that required careful investigation before proceeding. "Halt convoy," General Harrison ordered. "Sergeant, what's your assessment of this situation?" Maria studied the rockslide and surrounding terrain through binoculars while considering tactical implications. The rocks appeared naturally weathered rather than freshly blasted, suggesting genuine geological activity rather than deliberate sabotage. However, the location was ideal for an ambush, and the timing could still be suspicious even if the original slide was natural. "Sir, the slide looks natural, but the positioning creates an obvious choke point. Recommend we send the security team forward to clear the area while keeping our vehicle ready for immediate withdrawal if necessary." Her recommendation followed established military doctrine while incorporating specific considerations for their current threat level and terrain features. The general approved her plan, and the security team moved forward to investigate while Maria positioned their vehicle for rapid escape if needed. The investigation revealed no immediate threats, but it also uncovered evidence that someone had recently modified the rockslide to create a more effective barrier. Fresh tool marks on several boulders indicated deliberate repositioning to narrow the passable area, confirming that their opponents had indeed planned for multiple contingencies along various possible routes. "They've been preparing for days or weeks," the security team leader reported. "This wasn't a spontaneous operation, but part of a comprehensive plan to target the general regardless of which route he took." The discovery reinforced Maria's decision to choose the ridge route, as it suggested that all primary approaches had been compromised to some degree. However, it also meant that their opponents probably had contingency plans for the alternate routes as well, making continued vigilance essential throughout the remainder of their journey. As they carefully navigated past the modified rockslide, Maria noticed tire tracks in the soft soil beside the road. The tracks were recent and appeared to match the vehicles they had encountered at the morning's ambush site. Someone had been monitoring this location recently, possibly to confirm that their modifications remained effective or to observe military traffic patterns. "Sir, fresh tire tracks indicate recent surveillance of this position," she reported while maintaining steady progress through the narrow passage. "Suggests ongoing intelligence gathering rather than a single operation." General Harrison studied the tracks through his window while considering the implications. "Outstanding observation, Sergeant. This confirms that we're dealing with sophisticated opposition that's been planning for extended periods." The remainder of the ascent proceeded without incident, but everyone remained alert for additional signs of surveillance or sabotage. Maria's mechanical skills proved valuable as the thin mountain air and steep grades stressed the vehicle's systems beyond normal operating parameters. Her ability to recognize early warning signs of potential problems and make adjustments to prevent failures kept them moving when other drivers might have experienced breakdowns. Forward Operating Base Bravo occupied a strategic position on a high plateau that provided excellent visibility across surrounding valleys while offering natural defensive advantages. The base commander and his staff were waiting when the convoy arrived, having been alerted to the morning's attack and the potential ongoing threats to the general's security. "General, we've increased security posture based on the reports from your morning encounter," the base commander reported. "All personnel are accounted for, and we've established additional observation posts to monitor the surrounding terrain." The inspection proceeded efficiently as General Harrison evaluated defensive positions, equipment status, and troop morale. Maria remained with the vehicles while maintaining communication with both the base security team and the main compound. Her position allowed her to monitor radio traffic for any indications of threat activity while keeping their transportation ready for immediate departure if necessary. During the inspection, she noticed something that made her instincts flare with warning signals similar to what she had experienced before the morning's ambush. A civilian helicopter was visible in the distance, apparently conducting routine business, but following a flight path that provided excellent observation of the military base and the surrounding approach routes. The helicopter maintained distance that kept it outside restricted airspace while still providing clear visibility of military operations. Its flight pattern suggested surveillance rather than legitimate civilian business, and its timing coincided perfectly with the general's inspection visit. Maria decided that the situation warranted immediate attention from the security team. Base security, this is convoy driver. I'm observing a civilian aircraft that appears to be conducting surveillance of our position. Helicopter bearing 270 degrees, maintaining observation distance but showing pattern consistent with intelligence gathering. The base security team immediately began tracking the helicopter while coordinating with air traffic control to determine if the flight was legitimate. Within minutes, they confirmed that the aircraft was not on any approved flight plan and was operating in violation of several airspace restrictions related to military installations. Scrambling intercept aircraft, the base commander announced. Outstanding observation, Sergeant. That helicopter has been monitoring our operations for approximately 30 minutes. The civilian helicopter departed rapidly when military aircraft appeared to intercept it, but not before providing its operators with detailed intelligence about base defenses, personnel numbers, and the general's security arrangements. The incident confirmed that their opponents had extensive resources and sophisticated surveillance capabilities that extended far beyond simple ground operations. As the inspection concluded and preparations began for departure to their next destination, General Harrison approached Maria with an expression of genuine appreciation for her continued vigilance and tactical awareness. Sergeant, your observation skills have prevented potential intelligence compromise at multiple points today. I'm beginning to understand why your superiors recommended you for this assignment. The comment surprised Maria, as she had assumed her assignment resulted from her being considered expendable rather than valuable. Sir, I was told this was considered a low-risk mission suitable for inexperienced personnel. General Harrison studied her with new understanding of how her abilities had been consistently undervalued throughout her career. Sergeant, I suspect that assessment was based on incomplete understanding of your capabilities. Today's events suggest that you possess tactical skills and situational awareness that exceed those of many senior personnel. As they prepared to continue to forward operating Base Charlie, Maria realized that her role in the mission had fundamentally changed. She was no longer simply providing transportation, but functioning as a key member of the security team whose observations and decisions directly affected mission success and personnel safety. The responsibility was sobering, but also enormously satisfying after years of having her abilities overlooked or dismissed. The route to FOB Charlie descended from the mountain plateau through a series of switchbacks that offered spectacular views, but limited escape options if they encountered problems. Maria studied the terrain while developing contingency plans for various threat scenarios, her mind automatically calculating vehicle dynamics, defensive positions, and communication dead zones that could affect their tactical options. What's your assessment of the route ahead, Sergeant? General Harrison asked, having learned to value her tactical input. Challenging terrain with limited maneuver options, sir. The switchbacks create natural ambush positions, but they also limit our opponent's mobility. If we maintain proper spacing and communication, we can minimize our vulnerability while maximizing our ability to respond to threats. Her analysis incorporated lessons learned from the morning's encounter, while adapting to the specific challenges presented by mountain descent driving. The combination of tactical awareness and technical expertise that she brought to their mission planning was proving invaluable in ways that none of her previous supervisors had recognized or utilized. The descent from the mountain plateau tested every aspect of Maria's driving skills, as the heavily loaded convoy navigated switchbacks that grew increasingly treacherous with each mile. The armored vehicles, designed for protection rather than mountain driving, required constant adjustments to braking, steering, and gear selection to maintain control on the steep downward grades. Maria's mechanical intuition proved essential, as she recognized the early signs of brake overheating, and adjusted her technique to prevent system failure. Convoy lead recommend reducing speed and increasing interval between vehicles, she radioed to the security team. These grades are exceeding normal operating parameters for our equipment weight. The convoy commander acknowledged her recommendation, recognizing that her technical expertise was crucial for preventing mechanical failures that could strand them in vulnerable positions. The slower pace also provided additional time to observe potential threats and coordinate responses, though it extended their exposure time in terrain that favored attackers over defenders. Halfway through the descent, Maria's attention was drawn to unusual tire tracks in the soft earth beside the road. Unlike the maintenance vehicles and civilian traffic that occasionally used this route, these tracks showed the distinctive tread patterns of military-grade tires and appeared to have been made within the past 24 hours. The tracks disappeared around a bend ahead, suggesting that vehicles had recently traveled this route to establish positions overlooking the road. "Sir, I'm observing fresh military vehicle tracks that don't match our convoy profile," she reported quietly over the radio. "Pattern suggests recent positioning for observation or ambush." General Harrison immediately alerted the security team while Maria continued analyzing the tactical situation. The tracks indicated that at least 2 vehicles had traveled this route recently, both equipped with military-grade tires that suggested professional rather than civilian origin. Their positioning coincided perfectly with optimal ambush locations along the descent route. "All vehicles maintain heightened alert status," the general ordered. "Sergeant Gonzalez has identified potential threat indicators." The security team began implementing counter-surveillance measures while Maria adjusted their route to minimize exposure to potential firing positions. Her knowledge of vehicle capabilities and terrain features allowed her to identify alternate paths that provided better cover while maintaining progress toward their destination. However, the modified route required technical driving skills that pushed both her abilities and the vehicle's systems to their limits. As they approached the area where the tracks had indicated recent activity, Maria's radio crackled with transmissions from the advanced security team. "Contact front, multiple vehicles in overwatch positions, appear to be coordinating for complex ambush." The situation was developing exactly as Maria's analysis of the tire tracks had predicted. Their opponents had established positions at multiple points along the descent route, creating a coordinated trap designed to channel the convoy into a kill zone where escape would be nearly impossible. The morning's attack had apparently been only the opening phase of a much larger operation. "All stops prepare for immediate tactical maneuvering," General Harrison ordered. "Sergeant, what are our options for avoiding the ambush zone?" Maria's mind raced through the terrain features she had memorized during mission planning, searching for alternatives that could extract them from their current predicament. The switchback road offered limited maneuvering room, but her childhood experience with off-road driving suggested possibilities that might not be apparent to military personnel trained in conventional tactics. "Sir, there's a mining access road approximately 200 meters ahead that connects to the valley floor. It's not on our maps, but I noticed it during the ascent. Rough terrain, but it bypasses the ambush zone entirely." The proposal represented a significant risk, as the unmapped route could lead them into worse tactical positions or simply strand them in impassable terrain. However, continuing on their current path would certainly lead them into a carefully prepared ambush where their chances of survival were minimal. "Can you handle the terrain with our vehicle weight?" General Harrison asked, his question acknowledging both the risk and her demonstrated driving capabilities. "Yes, sir. I'll need to modify our suspension settings and engage manual transmission control, but the vehicle can handle it if I maintain proper speed and angle control." General Harrison's decision reflected the trust in her judgment that had developed throughout the day's events. "Do it. All vehicles follow Sergeant Gonzalez's lead. She's taking point on route selection." The responsibility of leading the convoy through unknown terrain while under threat from multiple directions was daunting, but Maria felt the calm focus that had carried her through previous crises. Her preparation and training had equipped her for exactly this type of challenge, even though no one had recognized her capabilities until circumstances forced their demonstration. The mining access road proved to be everything she had anticipated and worse. The narrow track descended at angles that challenged the vehicle's stability while winding between boulders and fallen trees that required precise maneuvering to navigate. Maria's constant adjustments to throttle, braking, and steering kept their vehicle under control, while the security team worked to maintain defensive formations in terrain that had never been intended for military operations. "Outstanding vehicle handling, Sergeant," General Harrison commented as she guided them around a particularly challenging obstacle. "Where did you learn to drive in terrain like this?" "Necessity, sir. Growing up in rural Texas, sometimes you had to reach broken-down equipment in places where normal roads didn't exist. My father taught me that with proper technique and patience, vehicles can go almost anywhere if you understand their limitations and capabilities." Her explanation helped the general understand how her unique background had created skills that were invaluable in their current situation. Military training provided excellent foundation for tactical driving, but it couldn't replicate the intuitive understanding of vehicle dynamics that came from years of practical experience in challenging terrain. The sound of gunfire echoed from the switchback road above them, confirming that their opponents had initiated the ambush only to discover that their targets were no longer present. Radio intercepts indicated confusion and frustration among the attackers as they realized that their carefully planned operation had been disrupted by tactical maneuvering they hadn't anticipated. "Base reports multiple explosion signatures at the ambush site," the communications specialist announced. "Appears they were prepared for coordinated destruction of our convoy." The intelligence was sobering, as it confirmed that their opponents had planned for complete elimination of the general and his staff, rather than simply capture or intimidation. Maria's observation of the tire tracks and subsequent route modification had literally saved their lives by avoiding a trap designed to leave no survivors. As they reached the valley floor and regained contact with the main road network, the tactical situation began to stabilize. Air support was finally available due to improved weather conditions, and additional ground forces were moving to secure the area around forward operating Base Charlie. However, the day's events had demonstrated that their opponents possessed capabilities and resources that posed ongoing threats to military operations throughout the region. "Sergeant, I want your assessment of our security posture for completing the mission," General Harrison requested as they approached their next destination. Maria considered the tactical lessons learned from their encounters while evaluating the remaining challenges they would face. "Sir, our opponents have demonstrated sophisticated planning, professional training, and access to classified intelligence about our operations. They've prepared contingencies for multiple routes and scenarios, suggesting that conventional security measures may be insufficient for the remainder of our mission." Her analysis was blunt but accurate, reflecting the reality that they were facing organized opposition rather than opportunistic threats. The general appreciated her honesty, as it provided the foundation for making informed decisions about how to proceed safely. "What modifications do you recommend for our approach to the remaining inspection sites?" "Randomized timing, multiple route options developed in real time, enhanced communication security, and assumption that all standard procedures have been compromised. We need to operate on the assumption that our opponents have detailed intelligence about normal military protocols." The recommendations represented a significant departure from standard operating procedures, but the day's events had demonstrated that standard approaches were inadequate against their current level of threat. General Harrison recognized that Maria's tactical thinking, combined with her technical skills and situational awareness, made her recommendations worthy of serious consideration. Forward operating Base Charlie appeared peaceful as they approached, but Maria's heightened awareness detected subtle indicators that suggested recent unusual activity. Vehicle tracks in the surrounding area showed patterns consistent with surveillance operations, and the positioning of civilian structures provided excellent observation points for monitoring military activities. "Sir, recommend we modify our inspection protocols to minimize predictable patterns," she suggested as they prepared to enter the base perimeter. The base commander met them with news that validated Maria's cautious approach. "General, we've had reports of unusual civilian activity in the surrounding area over the past week. Nothing overtly threatening, but patterns suggest coordinated observation of our operations." The inspection at FOB Charlie proceeded under enhanced security measures that incorporated lessons learned from their previous encounters. Maria remained with the vehicles while maintaining communication with multiple security elements and monitoring for any indicators of surveillance or threat activity. Her position allowed her to coordinate rapid departure procedures while providing tactical support for the inspection team. During the inspection, she noticed a pattern in radio traffic that suggested coordinated movement of multiple civilian vehicles in the surrounding area. The timing and coordination were too precise to be coincidental, indicating that their opponents were maintaining surveillance despite the increased security measures. However, the surveillance appeared to be observational rather than preparation for immediate attack. Base security, I'm detecting pattern behavior in civilian vehicle movement that suggests coordinated surveillance operations. Recommend enhanced counter-surveillance measures and preparation for rapid departure. The base security team confirmed her observations while implementing additional protective measures. The fact that their opponents were maintaining surveillance despite knowing that their presence had been detected suggested confidence in their capabilities and intentions that went beyond the day's previous encounters. As the inspection concluded and preparations began for their final destination, Maria realized that the most challenging phase of their mission was still ahead. Forward operating Base Delta was located in terrain that offered numerous advantages to attackers while limiting options for defenders. The route required traveling through areas where their opponents had demonstrated both capability and willingness to conduct complex operations. Sergeant, you've demonstrated exceptional tactical awareness and technical skills throughout today's mission, General Harrison said as they prepared to depart. I want you to know that your contributions have been essential to our success and survival. The recognition was gratifying, but Maria understood that their mission was not yet complete. The final leg of their journey would test everything they had learned while facing opponents who had demonstrated remarkable persistence and sophistication. Success would require maintaining the tactical discipline and technical excellence that had carried them through previous challenges while adapting to new threats that their opponents had undoubtedly prepared. As they departed Fob Charlie with enhanced security measures and modified routes based on Maria's recommendations, she reflected on how dramatically her role and responsibilities had evolved throughout the day. She had begun as a driver assigned to provide simple transportation, but circumstances had revealed capabilities that transformed her into a key tactical asset whose judgment directly affected mission success and personnel safety. The transformation had occurred through demonstrated competence under extreme pressure rather than political maneuvering or social connections. When the situation had demanded tactical thinking, technical expertise, and leadership under fire, she had delivered all three at levels that impressed experienced combat veterans and earned their genuine respect and trust. The final approach to forward operating Base Delta required traversing 20 miles of desert terrain where cover was minimal and visibility extended for miles in every direction. Maria studied the route while considering tactical implications that differed significantly from the mountain and forest environments they had navigated earlier. The open landscape eliminated ambush opportunities, but created different challenges related to vehicle breakdown, navigation accuracy, and exposure to long-range surveillance. Sir, the desert approach offers advantages and disadvantages, she briefed General Harrison as they prepared to depart Fob Charlie. We'll have excellent visibility of potential threats, but our opponents will have equally good observation of our movements. Vehicle reliability becomes critical, as mechanical failure in this terrain could create serious tactical vulnerabilities. Her analysis incorporated lessons learned throughout the day while adapting to the unique requirements of desert operations. The armored vehicles had been stressed by mountain driving and required careful monitoring of engine temperature, tire pressure, and cooling system performance to prevent failures that could strand them in exposed positions. The convoy departed with modified security protocols that reflected Maria's recommendations for operating in open terrain. Spacing between vehicles was increased to minimize vulnerability to coordinated attacks. Communication procedures were enhanced to provide early warning of potential threats, and contingency plans were developed for various breakdown scenarios. 30 minutes into the desert crossing, Maria noticed something that immediately triggered her tactical awareness. A civilian aircraft was visible in the distance, maintaining a flight path that paralleled their route while staying beyond the range of ground-based air defense systems. The aircraft appeared to be conducting routine business, but its timing and positioning were too convenient to be coincidental. "Sir, I'm observing a civilian aircraft that appears to be maintaining surveillance of our convoy," she reported while continuing to monitor the vehicle's systems for any signs of distress. Flight pattern suggests coordination with ground elements for targeting or intelligence gathering. General Harrison studied the aircraft through binoculars while coordinating with air traffic control to determine its legitimate status. Within minutes, they confirmed that the flight was not on any approved flight plan and was operating in violation of restricted airspace protocols related to military convoy operations. Base reports that aircraft is not responding to radio contact and appears to be equipped with surveillance equipment beyond normal civilian requirements, the communications specialist announced. Military interceptors are being scrambled, but response time is 30 minutes. 30 minutes was an eternity in tactical terms, especially considering that the aircraft's surveillance could be coordinating with ground elements preparing ambush positions ahead of their route. Maria realized that they needed to modify their approach to FOB Delta to avoid predictable routing that could be exploited by opponents with real-time intelligence. "Sir, recommend immediate course change to alternate approach route. If that aircraft is providing targeting information, continuing on our planned path could lead us into another complex ambush." The general studied the tactical situation while considering their options. The alternate route added significant time and distance to their journey, but it also disrupted any plans their opponents might have developed based on their original itinerary. Maria's demonstrated tactical judgment throughout the day had earned his confidence in her recommendations. "Approved. Take us to FOB Delta using whatever route you consider most secure." The authority to choose their route represented unprecedented trust in her judgment, but also enormous responsibility for the safety of everyone in the convoy. Maria immediately began implementing a modified approach that utilized terrain features and timing to minimize their vulnerability to surveillance and potential attack. Her new route took them through a series of washes and low ridges that provided intermittent concealment while maintaining progress toward their destination. The terrain was more challenging than the direct route, but it offered tactical advantages that outweighed the additional difficulty. However, the modified approach required technical driving skills that pushed her abilities to their limits. As they navigated through increasingly challenging desert terrain, radio intercepts indicated that their opponents were indeed coordinating surveillance with ground elements positioned along the original route. The aircraft had been providing real-time updates about convoy location and composition to forces preparing another complex ambush operation. Intelligence reports indicate that ground elements were positioned for coordinated attack using information from the surveillance aircraft, the communications specialist announced. "Your route modification appears to have disrupted another planned operation." The validation was satisfying, but Maria remained focused on the immediate challenges of reaching FOB Delta safely. The desert crossing was testing every aspect of her preparation and skill as rising temperatures and rough terrain stressed the vehicle's systems beyond normal operating parameters. Her mechanical knowledge proved essential for recognizing early warning signs and making adjustments to prevent failures. 40 minutes into the modified route, they encountered their most serious challenge yet. A mechanical problem in one of the security vehicles created an immediate tactical crisis as the disabled vehicle blocked progress while creating a vulnerable target for any opponents who might detect their position. The situation required immediate decision-making about whether to attempt field repairs, abandon the vehicle, or redistribute personnel among the remaining vehicles. "Convoy halt, mechanical failure in Security Vehicle 2, the team leader reported. "Appears to be transmission problem, vehicle is immobilized." Maria immediately began analyzing options while considering tactical implications of each possible course of action. The disabled vehicle contained essential personnel and equipment that could not be easily abandoned, but attempting repairs in their exposed position would create extended vulnerability to attack. Her mechanical expertise might provide solutions that others couldn't see. "Sir, request permission to assess the mechanical problem. My background might allow me to identify quick fixes that could get us mobile again." General Harrison approved her request, and Maria approached the disabled vehicle with tools from their maintenance kit. Her examination revealed that the transmission failure was caused by overheating due to desert conditions rather than fundamental mechanical breakdown. The problem could be temporarily resolved using field-expedient cooling techniques that would allow them to reach FOB Delta. Sir, the transmission failure is heat-related rather than mechanical damage. I can implement temporary cooling measures that should restore mobility for the remainder of our journey. Her solution involved modifying the cooling system using materials from their emergency kit, combined with techniques her father had taught her for dealing with overheated equipment in remote locations. The repair required 30 minutes of work while maintaining security in exposed terrain, but it offered their best chance of completing the mission with all personnel intact. During the repair process, the surveillance aircraft returned, apparently searching for their convoy after losing contact when they changed routes. Maria worked quickly while security personnel maintained watch for ground threats that might be coordinating with the aerial surveillance. The tactical situation was deteriorating, but her mechanical skills provided options that pure military training couldn't offer. Repair complete, sir. Vehicle should remain operational for at least 2 hours under normal conditions. The convoy resumed movement immediately, with Maria leading the modified approach to FOB Delta while monitoring the repaired vehicle's performance. Her solution was holding, but the time pressure of reaching their destination before the temporary repair failed added urgency to their tactical situation. Forward operating Base Delta appeared on the horizon as a cluster of buildings and defensive positions that offered security after the day's continuous challenges. However, Maria's heightened awareness detected indicators that suggested their opponents had not given up their pursuit. Dust clouds in the distance indicated vehicle movement that could represent either legitimate civilian activity or hostile forces attempting to intercept them before they reached safety. Sir, observing dust signatures that could indicate pursuit or intercept forces, she reported while maintaining maximum safe speed across the desert terrain. Recommend we notify FOB Delta to prepare for potential contact. The base commander at FOB Delta had been monitoring their progress throughout the day and was prepared for their arrival with enhanced security measures. As the convoy approached the perimeter, defensive positions were manned and air support was on standby to respond to any threats that might follow them to the installation. The inspection at FOB Delta proceeded efficiently, with General Harrison evaluating facilities and personnel while Maria coordinated with base security to monitor for any signs of continued surveillance or threat activity. The base's remote location and enhanced defensive measures provided better security than their previous stops, but vigilance remained essential. During the inspection, intelligence reports arrived that provided comprehensive analysis of the day's encounters. The attacks had been coordinated by a sophisticated organization with access to classified military information and professional military equipment. The operation represented a significant security breach that had implications extending far beyond their inspection mission. Sergeant Gonzalez, intelligence analysis confirms that your tactical decisions and observations were instrumental in preventing what would have been a catastrophic intelligence and security failure, General Harrison announced. Your contributions today have been exceptional at every level. The recognition was gratifying, but Maria realized that the most important outcome was the successful completion of their mission despite sophisticated opposition. Everyone had returned safely, the inspections had been completed, and valuable intelligence had been gathered about security threats that required immediate attention. As preparations began for their return journey to the main compound, Maria reflected on how dramatically her career trajectory had changed in a single day. She had begun as a driver whose capabilities were dismissed and undervalued, but circumstances had revealed skills and judgment that transformed her role entirely. The experience had demonstrated that competence and dedication could overcome prejudice and limited opportunities when given the chance to prove themselves. General Harrison approached her as she conducted final preparations for their departure, carrying documents that suggested important changes in her military career. Sergeant, I'm recommending you for immediate promotion and specialized training assignments that match your demonstrated capabilities. Your tactical thinking, technical skills, and leadership under pressure represent exactly the kind of talent our military needs to recognize and develop. The promotion and training opportunities represented validation of everything she had worked toward throughout her military career. However, the most valuable thing she had gained was confidence in her own judgment and abilities. She had proven to herself and others that her ideas were worth hearing, her skills were valuable, and her contributions could make the difference between success and failure in critical situations. The return journey to the main compound was completed without incident, but with security protocols that incorporated lessons learned throughout the day's operations. Maria's recommendations for route selection, timing, and tactical procedures had become standard operating procedures for future high-risk missions involving senior personnel. As they arrived at the main compound after 12 hours of continuous operations, Maria realized that her military career would never be the same. She was no longer just a driver, whose opinions were dismissed without consideration. She had become a respected member of the military community whose expertise was actively sought by senior officers and whose judgment was trusted in critical situations. The transformation had been earned through demonstrated competence under extreme pressure rather than political connections or social advancement. When the situation had demanded tactical thinking, technical expertise, mechanical knowledge, and leadership under fire, she had delivered all of these capabilities at levels that impressed experienced combat veterans and earned their genuine respect. More importantly, she had gained confidence in her own abilities and judgment that would serve her throughout the remainder of her military career. The experience had taught her that competence and preparation could overcome prejudice and limited opportunities when circumstances provided the chance to demonstrate true capabilities. She was ready for whatever challenges and opportunities lay ahead, knowing that she possessed the skills and determination necessary to succeed at the highest levels of military service.